How's it going, Laser Bursters? I'm Bobby Sixkilla. Today we're jumping straight back into Route to Double to try and get the good ending. I will bring you back where bits change significantly. But other than that, we're going to be skipping through it pretty rapidly. And I'll be following a guide for this one. So yeah, I'll bring you back next time there's something worth mentioning. Alright, now we should be at a place where the final ending is going to like really kick off. Because this is at the moment where Enna disappeared, gets killed, and then the whole chain of killings just starts at that point. It all goes downhill from there. So hopefully, this time, we'll be okay. Nothing else has really changed up to this point, so let's carry on, shall we? But at that moment, Watase's head suddenly started hurting and his skin felt numb. It was just like the time he'd been in the contaminated zone. Watase checked his watch. It was past time for them to take AD. Crap, teach, administer your AD. Right. Watase and Enna frantically injected themselves with their last AD. Watase felt his headache settle down immediately as he did so. The Procyon's reading was 5726 microsieverts. Now we really can't live without the AD. In other words, Watase and the others only had an hour left to live. I mean, think about it, it's been a real long time since it passed the first danger standard. It's been a few hours since the AD stopped being enough to protect us from the radiation here, so it's not surprising I've been hallucinating. Watase shuddered and then Enna quietly spoke up. True, but you know what? There's something else that's been bothering me. Huh? You said that it's not surprising that on top of your memory impairment you've been hallucinating thanks to your trips to the... Okay, this is the same as well. No sooner had Enna said that than Watase felt the anxiety in his heart rapidly spread. No, hold on, that's too dangerous. Huh? Those guys are already suspicious of you after the whole gun incident. Anything could happen if they see you now. But then what are you supposed to do? Yes, we stopped Enna from leaving. So that's going to change everything. She's not going to go get killed in the hallway. We can't search for AD. The survivors are an escape route in these circumstances, right? We're screwed unless we can persuade the others. The situation did indeed look hopeless. Even if they could persuade Jun and Nikita, that wouldn't change the fact that they didn't have enough AD. Everyone would be exposed to radiation in just another hour. They'd struggle as hard as they could for the last 5 hours, but in the end... Now that I think about it, we haven't solved any of our problems. They hadn't found the survivors, to say the least of Yuri. Someone with a gun could be hiding down there with them. His once trusted allies now saw him as their enemy. But even if we can't persuade them, all we have to do is find a way that'll let everyone survive. Well, of course, but do you really think any such way exists? He didn't. All normal methods were impossible. If there had been a way, then they would have done it ages ago. But what if they've been thinking about this the wrong way the whole time? Is there a method that we haven't thought of yet? What if it means running into danger we've avoided up until now, putting my life on the line? We're going into the reactor then, into Area N like he did last time, except he did it on his own last time. If I'm prepared for that, then what's the first method I can do? Words that he'd heard a while back replayed themselves in Watase's mind. It seems that there's still a huge fire going on in Area N, which is where the reactor is located. The security system's going haywire thanks to that, which means in theory, we can no longer access it externally. A light bulb went off in his head. A wide smile then spontaneously adorned his cheeks. What is it? Watase answered Enna's puzzled question with a subdued voice. Teach? I thought of a way to solve all our problems. Huh? The answer was right there at the very beginning. I already knew how long ago how to save everyone. What are you talking about? Why'd you keep it a secret if you knew all along? Shh. Watase put his index finger to his lips. Enna went quiet with a start. Don't shout. We're done for if Mortabe or the old man realize we're in here. You really know what to do? Yeah. I'll tell you and you alone. Listen up. Enna walked up to Watase in surprise. He then brought his mouth into her ear. Listen up. That method is for me to sacrifice my life. And whispered those decisive words. Huh? Enna's eyes widened. Watase then slipped behind her and got her in a chokehold. Watase paid no attention to Enna's pained grunts and kept squeezing her neck. Why? I'm sorry. Now that you know, you would have tried to stop me, right? So I'm sorry, but I need you to take a little nap here for a while. Before long, strength left Enna's body. Watase laid her on the floor. What do you think you're doing? He heard the auditory hallucination echo through his head again. It's no longer even surprised him, so he paid no heed to it and left the room. Watase destroyed the door opening mechanism located right next to the door once he left the room. This way Mortabe and the old man can't get into the room, and Teach will be safe. The auditory hallucinations then returned with a vengeance. Hey, answer me. Why do you not Professor Tsubakiyama around? What the hell are you trying to do? I really must be a lunatic if I'm actually going to answer an auditory hallucination. Watase laughed bitterly and then answered the hallucination. There's no point in trying to persuade Mortabe or the old man. Worse, we all only have an hour left. But even so, there's still just one way to save everyone. What? Watase took a security card out of his pocket. It was the level N card that the dead girl had on her. The only key that would open the door to Area N. The commander said that the security system's going haywire because of the fires burning on in Area N. So if I can put out those fires, then that means the security system should stabilize and the lockdown will be lifted. You're not actually thinking of going to Area N by yourself, are you? Bingo. The melted down nuclear reactor was in Area N. The radiation filling that area was no doubt off the charts compared to what they were faced with out here. But in spite of that, Watase still managed to force a smile. So what? What he truly feared wasn't death. It was powerlessness. To watch everything come to an end. Helpless to stop it. With that thought in mind, and his destination set, Watase started walking off. The auditory hallucination then began to shout desperately at him. Stop it, you dumbass, you'll die. You can't put out the fire of a burning nuclear reactor all by yourself. Even if you could, you'd be exposed to radiation for sure. That voice had guided Watase many a time up until now, even though he didn't know if it was his ally or his enemy. So when Watase once again heard that voice no one else knew of, he defied it. Sorry, but I can't listen to you this time. Someone's got to do it. Everyone's struggled hard for the last 5 hours, but look where it's got us. You want to die that badly? Are you really okay with dying for me saving everyone else? The voice was growing louder and angrier. Watase answered it with a wry smile. You wouldn't understand. It's not that I want to die. I just want to save everyone. That's all. Why are you going this far? This is the second time he'd been asked that today. Why are you going this far to save my life? Watase fondly remembered that question. It was from a time when the group had worked together to find a way to survive. A time before they were overtaken by Discord. Watase quietly muttered the answer he hadn't given back then. Wanting to save people's been the one constant for me this whole time. It was all because you told me to save Yuri way back when this all started. Without any memories of the past, these few hours he'd spent here in Labo were Watase's entire life. And the few memories he'd recovered have been a Labo too. This dark underground facility was the only world he knew. Maybe he could have made a different choice if he were living peacefully, but Watase had awoken in this facility consumed by radiation, all while bearing the burden of his role as a rescue squad captain. So all I wanted to do was fulfill my role. I hated feeling so powerless, surrounded by nothing but fire, explosions and smoke. When we didn't have enough AD, I went running straight into gas in a contaminated zone. When someone fell into a hole, I grabbed their hand and pulled them out. I protected Yuri with my body when the debris threatened to crush her. This whole time, all I've ever thought about is how to save everyone. The voice went quiet. It wasn't surprising. There was no one out there that could understand Watase's feelings. He was an entity who'd suddenly been born into this hellish environment without any memories. He didn't know who he was, only that he was a spirit bestowed with the sole duty of saving lives. That was him. That was Watase Kasasagi. The wounds he had gained in the process of fulfilling that duty suddenly began hurting. His burnt left hand, his cracked ribs, the cut on the back of his head. His throat felt like it was on fire from thirst and all the vomiting he'd done, and his body was as heavy as lead from all the exhaustion he'd built up. And yet he did not stop, for his will was the only thing he could rely on now. That he didn't even trust himself. I'll be damned if I let the others die because of my actions. And the same goes for letting anyone die because I did nothing. If putting out the reactor fires will save everyone, then I'll do it. Even if I lose my life as a result. Perhaps the auditory hallucination had figured out what he was thinking, as it spoke up in a faint voice. You get it now? If you do, then shut up. If you keep talking, I might lose my resolve. Watase muttered that and broke off into a run. He headed for Area N, home of the burning reactor. Watase's Procyon started beeping louder than he'd ever heard it before when he opened the connecting passageway gate to Area N. The Procyon's display was giving off a reading far greater than he'd ever seen before. 12,010 microsieverts. He was then assaulted by an intense headache and severe nausea. His skin was numb, his vision grew blurry. Watase turned his Procyon off and then kept walking. The nuclear reactor's right behind this gate. A melted down reactor, raging hellfire and extremely lethal doses of radiation. Watase shuddered as he imagined the hell on earth waiting for him right up ahead. But I'm ready. Watase kept himself from shaking. He pulled a hose out from the nearby fire hydrant. and held it with his left hand, with the security card in the right. Extinguishing preparations all set. Let's roll. Though genuine danger lay just up ahead, Watase did not falter. Endless courage was coursing through him. He suddenly broke out into a smile. Looks like I finally became a true rescue worker. He then took the card in his hand and opened the gate. At that moment, he felt as if he'd stepped into a raging storm. An invisible force broke over his body with an earth-shattering power. Yet Watase stood his ground and opened his eyes. Then he saw what lay on the other side of the gate. Watase gasped in the face of that sight. Standing on the other side of the door was a gigantic hall filled with the faint sound of running machinery. What the hell? There's supposed to be a melted down nuclear reactor there. There's supposed to be fires causing the security system to go haywire there. Yet all he saw was a cold, empty room. What's going on? Where's the burning reactor? Watase threw the hose aside and looked around. A transparent cylinder stood in the center of Area N, surrounded by 6 towering spire-like installations. Those installations all connected to each other near the ceiling, forming a hexagram. What is this machine? Watase staggered over to that device. Now he thought about it, he didn't really know what a nuclear reactor looked like. But he had a feeling that what he was looking at was no nuclear reactor. Hold on. Come to think about it, wasn't there something like this in that data teach showed me? Watase strained his brain to remember the words he'd seen earlier. Let's see, the words in that search list were Case N, meltdown, brain dysfunction, subject N, WX particle, particle amplifier, WX particle spread. That doesn't make sense. I finally realised what had been the source of the uncomfortable feeling he'd gotten back then. Though Case N and meltdown had showed up on the list, terms that should have been there weren't. There had been not a single sign of the terms nuclear reactor, radiation, radioactive material, or radiation exposure. Instead, there were mysterious terms like WX particle and particle amplifier. It was clearly strange. Watase couldn't explain it. However, he felt the answer lied in this room. And it's not just that there's no fire here. Could it be that there was never a nuclear reactor here to begin with? Watase's shout was full of astonishment. What's going on? Were we tricked? But by whom and why? His confusion begot more questions. He felt like he'd heard the same words being screamed at some point in the past. Did the commander lie to us? But why would he ever do that? No, the ones I should be doubting are the staff of Labo. So does that include old man Ukita too? Well, he did try to kill us. From what Watase had seen from how everyone had acted, it seemed the entire city believed that Labo housed a nuclear reactor. And why did the people running Labo lie about that? What meaning was there in putting on such an elaborate ruse to fool the townspeople? Watase's head hurt again when he thought about that. It felt far worse than any of his other headaches. All his wounds and skin began to hurt at the same time. To make matters worse, his body started shaking for no apparent reason. Wait, are these convulsions? Shit. He frantically looked around, hoping to find an exit. Instead, he spotted a strange object. Something was lying on the ground further up ahead. He staggered on over to it and picked it up. It was a security guard that had been split in two. The name on the card was Miyoko Tenkawa. Its security level was level N. What's this doing here? Just then an unpleasant stench suddenly took hold of Watase's nose. It was a familiar stench, albeit 100 times worse than any past experience he'd had with it. I thought we were going to be fast enough to save him. The stench of blood. A bad feeling rose in Watase's heart as he took a look behind the device. What? A boy garbed in a school uniform was lying there. His body was collapsed in a pool of spreading blood. Isn't that Natsuhiko Tenkawa? His name and face matched up perfectly with Watase's memory of him. Hey, you okay? But Natsuhiko didn't respond to his calls. Watase took off his gloves and pressed his index finger against Natsuhiko's carotid artery. He couldn't feel a pulse, and Natsuhiko's body was cold. Watase frantically laid Natsuhiko flat on the floor and began CPR. Just do it like Tachibana and Mortabe did. 15 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. No reaction. Goddammit, goddammit! Watase desperately continued performing CPR while fighting off his headache and convulsions. 15 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. Yeah, we know. Please don't die. Soon enough, Watase felt a faint pulse. Oh shit, we saved him. I did it! Watase pressed his hand against Natsuhiko's mouth and felt the boy's breath. But that didn't change the fact that he had nigh fatal wounds. It'd be a miracle if he survived after losing that much blood. But why is he bleeding so bad to begin with? Watase looked over Natsuhiko's body to find there were several small holes and wounds here and there behind his uniform. Gunshot wounds? The sight of them was no longer as shocking as shocking to Watase after having seen so many of them before. Just then he noticed something lying next to Natsuhiko. He felt the object's heavy weight pass through his arms when he picked it up. It was different from the one Ena had, but it was undoubtedly a pistol. Was Natsuhiko attacked by the killer too? Watase groaned in shock, but at that moment... Salia? A mysterious fear flared up in him. Ha! The monster looked at him and laughed. At that moment, just as an indescribable fear sent shivers down his spine. He was assaulted by an intense pain akin to his brain being crushed. The man screamed, faced with agony unlike anything he'd ever felt before. That was... my head, it can't be, not you too! His well-toned body proved helpless in the face of that power. You damn monster! In spite of that, he struggled against it, attempting to complete his mission. Nevertheless, his will broke as the overwhelming pain surged through his head once more. He staggered backward, clutching his head. The monster's face warped sinisterly, its gaze piercing right through him. Gah! He then fled without looking back. If he stood his ground, he'd be killed, annihilated, and so he held his throbbing head as he ran for his life. I have to get away, as far away as possible. He had to retreat to a place where the monster's power couldn't reach him. But it was all for naught. Everything in front of him flashed as he felt an agony like his head exploding. Yeah. What the hell was that? It was a memory he had no recollection of. It seemed like it was a memory of just before Watase had lost his memories. And the thing that had scared Watase so much back then was this boy right in front of him. No way, there's no way that's true. Watase shook his head to dismiss the delusion. Anyway, I've got to get him to a safe place. Watase put the pistol in his breast pocket, then lifted Natsuhiko's body up into his arms. But just then, Watase felt a presence behind him. Okay, Salyu's here now. He turned around and then saw it. Someone with a tiny frame was charging straight at him. In their hand was an axe. Just as Watase realized that, the figure swung the axe down toward the crown of his head. Whoa! Watase strafed to the side, dodging the sudden swing. He desperately put distance between him and his attacker, then confirmed their identity. Standing there was none other than... It was Salyu, the girl who'd run away from him twice now. A light as cold as ice shimmered in the depth of her eyes. Gripped in her hand was a burnt axe. That axe was the one who'd been clutched in the hand of his deceased co-worker, Hiyama. The one that had mysteriously disappeared later on. Watase had been wondering this whole time who had taken it, and now... No way, did you take it? Salyu ignored Watase's question and charged straight at him again. Whoa! She was aiming for Watase's neck. He barely leaned back in time, leaving the axe to slice only through air. The weight of the weapon was throwing her around, causing her to sway forward heavily. Now, he immediately grabbed for Salyu, but she swung her leg up a second earlier. She made use of his centrifugal force to launch a swift kick, connecting solidly with his temple. Watase's brain rattled and his vision grew dark. Despite that, he still managed to quickly thrust Salyu away. He then jumped back and put some distance between them again. He was greeted with a cold look on Salyu's face when his sight came back. What's she doing? She attacked without the slightest hesitation, using battle techniques that didn't befit a girl of her size and age. Worse, Watase's headaches and convulsions are only getting stronger. It was likely he'd die for real if he fought in this condition. Watase hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should take out his pistol in his breast pocket. Now what am I thinking? I can't hurt someone else to protect myself. Just as he thought that, he noticed that Salyu's body was faintly trembling. She was convulsing the same way Watase had been for a while now. Hey, you wouldn't happen to have a headache too, would you? Then get out of here right now. What good is fighting me if it means putting your body in such extreme danger? Salyu suddenly stopped in what appeared to be surprise. That line again. Again? You said the same thing last time as well. What? Watase's body froze with surprise and confusion. When was this last time? When did this girl and I... The moment the confusion left Watase wide open. Salyu charged at him yet again. Shit, I can't hold out next time, I'll be done for. When Watase thought that, his body moved on its own. Watase then lowered his body as if putting himself into a crouched start for a 100-meter dash. Oh, we're gonna kill her again? He filled his legs with strength and released it all at once and sprung at Salyu. Her face was filled with shock. Watase tackled her with the force of a bullet a second later, hitting her right in the waist. The axe slipped out of Salyu's hand as she fell on her back. Watase used his remaining momentum to straddle her. Watase came to his senses only to realize he was pinning Salyu down. What? The actions he'd taken just now had clearly been etched into him instinctively through training, but they were obviously not skills needed to save lives. Where'd I ever pick up a skill like that? Sally glared up at him, her eyes seething like cold blue flames. Watase shook off the chills running down his spine and tried reasoning with her. Why'd you attack me? Please tell me. I don't have the slightest idea why. Sully's eyes moved just then. Her gaze was now focused on Natsuhiko. Wait, was it because you thought I attacked Natsuhiko? If that's what it was, you got the little wrong. I was about to take him to the infirmary before you attacked. I swore I wasn't going to hurt him more than he already is. Sully then spoke in a near inaudible voice. Stop it. Huh? Watase brought his face closer to hers to hear her better. Even I can see through your thinly veiled lies. Stop it. What? What do you... But Sully moved her right hand as fast as lightning before Watase could finish. She poked him in the eyes, temporarily blinding him. Watase felt Sully slip her body out from under him at the same time. Crap, I gotta put some distance between us. Watase had no way of dodging any axe swings this time. Shit. Watase blindly stretched out his hands in the darkness. His left hand came into contact with something. It was a sensation of cloth, a sleeve. Watase grabbed onto it and focused solely on pulling it towards him. Sully's gasp echoed through the darkness. Watase kept clutching onto her with his left hand while his right hand remained free. I have to defeat her right here and now. Watase's body spurred on by his ever-growing fear, filled with fierce strength. Oh crap, here we go. He reluctantly clenched his hand into a fist so he could knock her unconscious when... Stop! Don't hurt her! The auditory hallucination showed up again. Watase came back to his senses and opened his raised fist. He then slipped behind Sully and locked her into a chokehold. Let me go! Sully struggled. Watase's vision hadn't returned yet. I'm sorry about this. Watase mentally apologized to Sully as he applied pressure to her thin neck. All while being careful not to squeeze it too hard. All the strength in her body soon faded away. Watase let out a big sigh once he confirmed this, then loosened his grip. His sight soon came back. He could see Sully was passed out cold in his grip. That was too close, she really did want to kill me. But anyway, what can I do for her now? His head and skin still hurt like hell. His convulsions also hadn't let up. He didn't know why, but his instincts were screaming that it was too dangerous for him to stay here too long. I've got to get these two out of here. Watase carried Natsuhiko and Sully. They were heavy. Watase's body truly was in poor shape if it felt that way to him. He staggered out of Area N along with Natsuhiko and Sully. He left through the same door he'd come through, and when he made his way out to the connecting passageway... Captain? He found Kazami standing there. Thank God you're alright. Tachibana, what are you doing here? Watase was cautious of Kazami after what had transpired back in the surveillance room. Well, I was worried about you, so I checked the surveillance cameras and saw you going into Area N. But what in the world happened with those two? Kazami was looking at Natsuhiko and Sully with shock. Oh, you mean Natsuhiko and Sully? They're unconscious for now. Where did you... I found Natsuhiko collapsed in Area N. My guess is Sully probably followed me there. Wait, he was collapsed in Area N? But isn't that where the burning nuclear reactor is? No, I don't get why either, but there was nothing like that in Area N. Huh? That revelation left Kazami speechless. But Watase had figured she'd have a hard time believing that, so he handed over his level N card. You'll understand better if you see it for yourself. Go ahead. Kazami nodded dubiously, then took the card and ran towards Area N. About 30 seconds later, Kazami came back quickly and immediately started talking. I don't believe it. How is it this even? Watase nodded as he took the level N card back from him. Yeah, it looks like we were being duped by someone from the start. But that machine is probably something other than a nuclear reactor. You know, Natsuhiko is currently bleeding out with multiple gunshot wounds while I'm carrying him. So this conversation is probably better suited after we treat that. Anyway, but that machine is probably something other than a nuclear reactor. It appeared Kazami also believed the giant machine in Area N was no reactor. However, Tachibana, let's save the explanations and discussions for later. We need to treat Natsuhiko as soon as possible, before it's too late. Kazami looked at Natsuhiko and nodded. You're right, he's bleeding very badly. Looks like he'll need a blood transfusion. And let's head over to the infirmary. They got blood packs and a transfusion kit there. Roger that, then I'll carry one of the children. Can you do it with that leg of you? I've recovered quite a bit. I think I can manage. Kazami pressed against the wound in her leg and carried Sully. But if this facility doesn't have a nuclear reactor, then what the world is this place? I don't know. I don't have the slightest clue. Those words came straight from the bottom of Watase's heart. Watase and Kazami carried Natsuhiko and Sully respectively towards Area 4. All the emergency staircases in Area 5 were out of commission, so they decided to get to the infirmary through Area 4. Captain, be careful on the way there. Why, did something happen? Actually, Mortabe and Mr. Ikeda ran out of the surveillance room before I went to Area N. The two of them do not seem to be in their right minds. We need to check Ina and make sure she's okay. Not in their right minds? I'm not sure how to explain it, but at any rate, it would be dangerous for you to come across either of them. He didn't know the details, but the tone in Kazami's voice and the look in her face were enough to convince Watase. Alright, then I'll be on my guard for now. Watase and Kazami carefully made their way down to the connecting passageway. Fortunately, they made it to the infirmary without encountering anyone else. They then laid the children down on the beds and began treating Natsuhiko immediately. Kazami used the scanner there to check Natsuhiko's blood type. Got it, type O, RH positive, no acute reactions. She then took the type O blood pack out of the refrigerator and quickly set it into the transfusion kit. Finally, she pricked Natsuhiko with the needle, starting the transfusion. While all that was going on, Watase used all the Chiron he had to help seal up Natsuhiko's wounds as much as possible. How's his condition? Think he'll pull through? His respiration and pulse are extremely feeble, but his vital signs are just barely stable. I can't make any guesses as to how it will turn out in the end, but I think he'll just pull through if we keep the transfusion going. Immense relief washed over Watase. Thank God. But this is still strictly first aid treatment. I believe we should get him to a hospital as soon as possible. But before we get to that, please tell me something. What in the world happened after you left the surveillance room? You see, Kazami stared at Watase with a stern look in her face as the latter recounted the series of events that led him to this point. He started by telling her how he'd gone to Area N all by himself to try and put the fires out in order to end the lockdown. He then talked about how there had been no fires there, to say the least of a melted down nuclear reactor. Finally, he mentioned how he found Natsuhiko and was attacked by Sally right afterwards and then reluctantly knocked her unconscious. So that's what happened. Kazami lowered her eyes to the floor as she pondered what Watase had told her. There's just so many unanswered questions this raises that I have to admit I'm having trouble figuring out where to start, but first of all, what do you think about Labo, Captain? What do you mean? There was no nuclear reactor or fire in Area N, yet the lockdown is still going on. Is there any reason you can think of as to why that is? Because I want to make sure none of us leave alive. Obviously. Honestly, I have no clue. But I'm convinced now that the fact that there's no nuclear reactor here means this place isn't even a nuclear research facility to begin with. I agree. But that raises another question. That means there's no radiation here. Yet we still got numb skin and headaches when we didn't take any AD. I assume it's just the placebo effect that we get from the AD. Yeah, what's more, I still got headaches, vomited, and even passed out when I went into contaminated zones. So that means there's still something dangerous contaminating this place. Then if the power of suggestion, that's what's contaminating this place, then if the machine in Area N wasn't a nuclear reactor, what in the world was it? Just as Kazami said that, a fragmented memory washed through Watase's brain. Wait a minute, I think I've seen that machine somewhere before. What? Was it before you lost your memories? No, it was more recently, just a few hours ago. I'm pretty sure it was... But before Watase could remember, the door to the infirmary suddenly opened. Uh-oh. Watase and Kazami turned around in shock to find Ukita standing there. Well, well, if it isn't Captain Kasasagi and Lieutenant Tachibana. I thought I heard noises coming from here. What might you two be up to? What? Ukita's eyes were glazed over with instability. His gaze locked onto the two survivors resting in their respective beds. Natsuhiko and Louise? Dear Lord, how'd they get hurt so badly? And where have they been this whole time? Watase carefully chose his words as he answered. You see, I took the two of them into custody in Area N after I went there to try and put the fires out. Did you say putting out the fires in Area N? I see, now I finally understand. I knew it, you really are a traitor, through and through. Old man? He didn't understand why Ukita was angry, but Ukita ignored the bewilderment on Watase's face and continued talking in a subdued voice. Captain Kasasagi, I know you'll have trouble believing this, but I did trust you. I truly believed you to be a man just... You tried to kill me! Repeatedly, dipshit! That's why I risked my life in my own way to save those girls, but then you... You'll pay for this. Ukita grunted and reached into his breast pocket. Then he pulled out a pistol. It was the same pistol that Ina had given him. The one whose bullets and magazine had been removed and given to Jun and Ina for safekeeping, leaving Ukita with the gun itself. It should have been unloaded. Is this your idea of a bluff? That thing's no better than a toy without a magazine, you know. A bluff. So I guess you didn't know, did you? You can still fire a gun without a magazine so long as you have bullets. Granted, you have to load and fire them one at a time. Where in the hell did you get bullets? Where indeed? Ukita's attitude made it clear that he apparently wasn't bluffing. From Jun, she's against us as well, remember? Go ahead and laugh. I know it's fragile justice, but it's my choice. If killing you means it'll put an end to all this, then I'll do what I must. Even if it means staining my hands in sin for the first and last time of my life. Ukita's words made no sense. His face was clearly brimming with insanity. Mr. Ikeda? Wait, listen to me before you fire that thing. Maybe you didn't know this, but there's no nuclear reactor in Area N. So there was no need for us to be afraid of radiation from the very beginning. If it was Ikeda's fear of radiation that had caused him to fall so far off the beaten track, then hearing that would likely bring him back to his senses. However, you're still uttering such nonsense at this point? Believe me, it's the truth. Give him the Area N card to go check himself. Well, it matters not, either way. Your mission ends here. Die, traitor. Nikita pulled the trigger. Watase froze in terror, but right then... Captain, look out! Nikita's bullet bore a hole in the wall behind Watase. Old man. Watase pulled his pistol out as Kazami grappled with Nikita. What? Nikita frantically turned around when he caught sight of the gun pointed straight at him. Watase had a chance to shoot him in the back right there, but he couldn't pull the trigger. He didn't even know if there were any bullets left in that pistol. Nikita ran right out the door and out of sight. The only trace of him left were the shouts coming from the hallway. So you've shown your true colours at last, Captain Kasasagi. No, you just pointed a gun at his face and tried to shoot him, stupid. Well, you expect him to just stand there and take a bullet because that's the nice thing to do? But I will ensure that you get your just desserts, mark my words. The sound of Ikita's footsteps disappear in the direction of Area 4. Damn, what the hell's gotten into him? There was something suspicious about Watase, no question about it, but Ikeda was taking things way too far. He then suddenly realised that Kazami was staring at the gun in his hands. Captain, what are you doing with that pistol? Oh right, forgot to mention. I found this lying next to Natsuhiko in Area N. Oh, I see. It seems she was scared of the pistol. Watase quickly put it back into his breast pocket and changed the subject. Anyway, we need to get out of here as quickly as possible. Now that the old man knows we're here, this place is no longer safe. Natsuhiko's transfusion was still in progress, and Sally hadn't shown any signs of regaining consciousness. Their lives would be in danger if another fight broke out in the infirmary. And Teacher's in trouble too. You got a gun, he won't come back. You mean Miss Tsubakiyama? Now that I think about it, where is she? I left her in an office in Area 2. It wouldn't be surprising if the old man attacked her too, given the way he's acted just now. Understood. Then let us rendezvous with Miss Tsubakiyama while we continue Tenkawa's transfusion. Kazami attached the blood pack and transfusion kit to Natsuhiko's body. Watase then carried him, with Kazami doing the same for Salia as they left the room. By the time Watase and Kazami returned to the office in Area 2, the door had been totally destroyed. What in the hell? There was now a giant hole in the door, one big enough for a human to fit through. Now the destruction of the door opening mechanism meant nothing at all. Teach? Watase and Kazami frantically climbed through the hole. But there was no one there. Perhaps Ina had regained consciousness and escaped on her own. Watase was glad that she was apparently okay, but who the hell did this? How'd they even break the door in the first place? I have a bad feeling about this. Let's get out of here, we need to find a safe place. Right. Watase and Kazami ran out of the room without a moment's delay. And they neared it. They then neared a connecting passageway to Area 1 when a strange noise coming from up ahead stopped them in their tracks. It's Jun with the engine cutter. You hear that? Watase held his breath and peeked into the passageway from a nearby corner. Mortar Jun was about 10 meters away, wielding the engine cutter. She muttered something as blood poured down from her head. Where in the hell is that bastard? I see, so that really was it all along. Then I have no choice. I gotta do it, I can't protect anyone. I gotta kill that son of a bitch. I gotta bite the bullet and go through with it. Jin talked to thin air as if she were chanting a curse. Watase trembled with fear when he heard her. Am I that son of a bitch? Watanabe doubted me, so if those doubts just kept on escalating. It was strange no matter how he thought about it, but with Ikeda's attempt on his life still fresh in his mind, that was the only possibility he could come up with. Watase turned around and whispered into Kazami's ear. This is really bad. Mortabe's brought out the engine cutter. Then we have no choice. Let's fall back for the time being. You okay with that? I mean, Mortabe's like a sister to you. I don't want to, but any attempts to persuade her otherwise will most likely be futile with her in that state. Watase nodded. He couldn't deny the truth in Kazami's pained statement. As they tried to walk away, Watase's boots clacked noisily against the floor. Who's there? The sound of the engine cutter's motor rapidly grew closer. Oh no. Let's run for it. Watase and Kazami desperately broke off into a run down the passageway. They looked around for a place to hide without stopping. They fled into the Area 3 connecting passageway and closed the gate before Kazami chose to speak up in a frightened voice. Captain, where do you think we should run to? We'll be screwed no matter what room we hide in now that Mortabe's got that engine cutter. She'll just break down the door. Well, we need to find a safe place to retreat to. Yeah, if we keep running around with these kids on our backs, we're gonna get caught eventually. Watase checked his watch. It reads 2:51 PM. There were just 15 minutes left until the AD wore off. There was no doubt that everyone underground would be severely injured once that time came. A heavy silence hung in the air. Kazami soon shattered it with a sad voice. Why did things turn out this way? We're being chased by our squad mate and people we swore to rescue, and we have no place to run. We can't save anyone, not even ourselves. It was the first time Watase had heard her sound so hopeless. So much so that it nearly broke his heart just listening to her. God damn it, so there's nothing we can do? Would it be better to just give it all up? But just as Watase thought this, an image flashed through his brain. Watase, you can't give up. You have to keep fighting on and on until the bitter end. If you want to die, you can do that later. Watase gasped. What was that? Watase had no idea. It appeared to be one of his old memories, a scene from his now forgotten past. Those words were nostalgic, sad and comforting. They gave Watase the strength he needed. Tachibana, don't give up. Watase relayed those words to Kazami. We're still alive and there's still people we need to save. So fight on until the bitter end. If you want to give up, you can do that later. Those words brought the silence between them back. All Watase could hear was the sound of Kazami breathing. When they exited the connecting passageway, Kazami quietly spoke up. Yes. Her voice was brimming the will of someone determined to escape from this despair. Let's find a way to escape. Watase said that to Kazami as they entered Area 3. If there's nowhere safe in this facility, then getting outside is our only shot. However, we can't try to end the lockdown by putting out the fires in Area N, naturally. We have to find another way. Yes, but is there a way out somewhere else? Mortabe and I searched high and low for one before you woke up. I'm sure the commander and the other rescue workers outside did the same. When you consider that there are no signs that they've broken their way in, our odds don't look very good. Good point. Watase had also looked for an alternate escape routes after they found the escape via the cargo lift was impossible. But then other problems had taken over while he tried and failed to do that. And now they were... Watase suddenly remembered something at that moment. Wait, that's right. Have you remembered something? Watase nodded and looked at Kazami in the eye. The pipes. You notice the thick pipe near the ceiling? When we went into the engine room? Yes. The old man told me that it's an intake pipe used to take water from the nearby lake to use as coolant for the nuclear reactor. There is no nuclear reactor though. He also said there was constantly water running through the pipe so it would leak out and flood Labo if we ever broke a hole in there. But since there's no nuclear reactor, doesn't that cast doubt on the pipe's true purpose? If that's just a dummy, then we can escape through there. You're right, but I don't think it is a dummy. Perhaps it acts as coolant for that giant machine. If that's the case, then that means there's still a risk that Labo will flood if we break a hole in the pipe. I see. Damn it. If only we had a way to turn off the flow of water. We may be able to come up with a plan if we figure out what that machine truly is. Once she said that, Watase's eyes widened. Hold on, that machine, it's... Huh? I just remembered where I've seen that machine before. Where? The engine room. There was a list of machine manuals in the terminal in that room. And there was a picture of that giant machine on the very first page. You're right. Maybe there's a way to turn off the water written on that very manual. Captain, let's go check it out right away. Watase nodded and headed for the engine room. They entered the engine room for the first time in what felt like forever. Watase and Kazami laid Natsuhiko and Salio onto the floor, ran up to the terminal and began fiddling with it. WX Particle Amplifier Operation Manual. This is it. Watase and Kazami brought their shoulders together as they looked over the image on the monitor. WX Particle Amplifier Operation Manual. Introduction. This document is an instruction manual for the WX Particle Amplifier. Due to the fact that there is great danger involved in its operation, please read the manual carefully before you proceed. Furthermore, the properties of WX particles have extremely harmful effects to the body. Examples of this include dysynthesia, brain dysfunctions, genetic abnormalities, etc. The symptoms are dependent on the level of particle energy as listed below. Without AD, 0 to 2000 microsieverts, no effects. 2000 to 4000 microsieverts, dyssynesthesia, nausea, headaches, general abnormalities. 4000 to 8000 microsieverts, brain dysfunctions, faint consciousness. 8000 microsieverts and up, unconsciousness. The intensity and probability of displaying the aforementioned symptoms vary depending on the energy levels. With AD, 0 to 6000 microsieverts, no effects. 6000 to 8000 microsieverts, dyssynesthesia, nausea, headaches, genetic abnormalities. 8000 to 12,000, brain dysfunction, faint consciousness. 12,000 and up, unconsciousness. AD adds up to 4,000 microsieverts of protection, hence the increased levels. When using the amplifier normally, the particle energy level should not exceed 2000 microsieverts. When used for advanced experiments, the particle energy level should not exceed 4000 microsieverts. Tachibana, do you have any idea what this thing's talking about? Now, I've never heard of WX particles before, though I can assume that they're similar to radiation, that they're both capable of having harmful effects to the body. Watase felt the same, but now wasn't the time to be thinking about that. I don't see anything in here about coolant. Watase read through the manual until a certain passage caught his eye. Regarding water coolant system, the amplifier generates large quantities of heat while in operation, thus a water coolant system has been installed in the engine room that takes in natural water from the Rokume lake to utilize as coolant fluid. The coolant is drawn in through the intake pipe and is drained through a drainage pipe. Both pipes are 1 meter in diameter, 2.4 centimeters thick. Both have a volumetric flow rate of approximately 1,200 liters per minute. The coolant taken in by the intake pipe is drained once it is increased in temperature by approximately 25 degrees Celsius. In other words, if Lake Rokume is at 28 degrees Celsius during August, the coolant is expelled at 53 degrees Celsius. The control of the water flow is carried out by a forced circulation pump located in the drainage pipe. Furthermore, there is a filtering mechanism with the intake pipe in order to prevent any foreign bodies from contaminating the coolant fluid. The filtering mechanism operates at high speeds to ensure that only distilled/filtered water is used as coolant. The expulsion of foreign bodies such as algae is carried out by a foreign body expulsion outlet located in the filtering mechanism. That's what we need to go at. We need to go through the foreign body expulsion outlet then. Should the filtering mechanism ever break down, there is a risk of unfiltered water entering the amplifier and causing severe damage. Therefore, a floodgate located in the intake pipe will close in the event that the filtering mechanism breaks down, thereby preventing the flow of unfiltered water. At the same time, the forced circulation pump and amplifier will cease operation, stopping the flow of coolant. The location of each device can be seen in the diagram below. This is it. Watase muttered that in a low voice as he looked at it. So this really is our only way out. He looked up at the ceiling to find the intake pipe and drainage pipe running side by side. There was a ladder next to the pipes that led right up to them. Watase strained his ears and heard the sound of water running. He could also see a large machine located below the intake pipe. It was apparently the filtering mechanism. If we destroy the filtering mechanism, then that'll stop the water from running. Then we can escape to Lake Rokume through the pipe. You're right. But what do you plan on doing after you've stopped the water from running? Huh? According to this diagram, the intake pipe is located under Lake Rokume's water level, meaning lava will still be flooded if you open a hole in it, running water or not. So that means opening a hole in the drainage pipe instead is probably our only shot. If we stop the water and then open a hole on the top of the pipe, then that means not much water should leak out of it. However, the drainage pipe is filled with all that heated water from the amplifier. So if it really is 53 degrees Celsius, you won't last in there. We could always open a hole in the bottom of the drainage pipe and drain all the water out of it that way, but yeah, too dangerous. We don't know how much water will come pouring out of that thing. So in the slight chance we get floods of water coming out of it, then there's a possibility everyone here will still drown. That means Yuri, Mortabe, and the old man, and all the other survivors. We can't risk everything on all or nothing bet, which means we really should just open a hole on top of the drainage pipe. And that means we have 3 problems we have to solve first. How do we open a hole in the pipe? How do we ensure that we can breathe inside the flooded pipe? How do we walk through 500 meters of 53 degrees Celsius water from here to Lake Rokume? Let's think of a way. If we can solve these problems, we're home free. Yes. Watase and Kazami looked at each other and started thinking. Let's figure out how to open a hole in the pipe first. If we could somehow take the engine cutter from Mortabe. No, out of the question. We have an alternative to that anyway. Huh? Hiyama's axe. It's lying in area N right now. If the pipe's just 2.4 centimeters thick, I shouldn't have any trouble opening up a hole in that thing with a little elbow grease. You think you can do it? Well, who do you think I am? Kazami grinned when she saw Watase trying to act tough. I trust you. Alright, next step. How do we keep breathing through the flooded pipe? I have an idea about that. We have that air tank. What is it? There's an air tank in that makeshift base. It has enough air to last about 20 minutes. I cannot say for certain that it's enough to get through 500 meters of water, but it's our only chance. But I thought we couldn't use the air tank because the suit's faceplate is broken. It'll be alright. You'll be fine so long as you grab onto the hose sticking out of the tank and put it directly in your mouth. We don't do that during firefighting dispatches because it leaves you with only one hand free and doesn't allow you to talk. So I never suggested it up until now, but if all I'm doing is walking through water, then it might turn out okay, huh? It's a very risky plan, but one they had to bet on. The plan was looking more and more feasible with each problem they tackled, but for their efforts, the true problem still remained. Okay, then let's move on to the last problem. How do we withstand 53 degrees Celsius water? I'm sure I have my baths hotter than that, come on. Kazami nodded and answered. The first thing you should know is that 50 degrees Celsius air is not the same as 53 degrees Celsius water. Since sweat cannot evaporate to cool the skin underwater, hot water does far more damage to the body than hot air. You've never been in 53 degrees Celsius bath, right? I don't know. It's because your body can never withstand water of that temperature. So, should we wait for the water to cool down after we stop from running? That'd be the best way, but it'd probably take too much time. A 2.4 centimeter pipe's got to be a lot like a thermos, right? Indeed. What if we tried running it once we confirmed the water temperature's gone down a little and risk a burn? Even if we could withstand it, the survivors, especially Tenkawa, were badly wounded. I do not believe they'd last. I see. Taking Natsuhiko with us out of here is already difficult enough as it is, isn't it? But if just one of us manages to escape, they can contact the commander and the others and have them help us. Or they could even call the police. They'd then be able to restrain Mr. Ikita and Mortabe. So then what you're saying is, we need to find a way so that at least one of us can endure the water temperature and escape, huh? Watase thought carefully about everything he'd been through up to this point. He mobilized all the excessive knowledge he'd gained in the last 5 hours. Think, is there anything in this facility now that can withstand heat? He and Kazami were wearing firefighter suits. They had fire-resistant properties, so they probably wouldn't be any use against hot water. What's more, there were cuts in them all over their sleeves, neck area, so water would just get in from there. And is there anything else we can use to completely seal the damaged spots? But even if they could, their faces were still completely exposed, so it was probably impossible to make the whole thing airtight. What about the, our co-workers who were dead? We could steal their ones. Come on, don't give up. Think, there's got to be a way. I remembered everything he'd seen up to this point. First, it was the gear he'd observed in the makeshift base, the air tank, air jack, AD, Procyon, and engine cutter. Next is the things he had on him, his PDA, security card. Both were useless here. Finally, there was what they'd found in the facility, the transfusion packs, transfusion kit, oxygen tank, Chiron, distilled water, the pistol, all of them useless. Did I see anything else? The answer has to be there, I know it. He looked back at the path he'd taken to reach this point. He'd woken up, met Kazami and Jun and saved Yuri. They geared up and made at the makeshift base, met Ina and Ukita, and began their search after seeing the images of Natsuhiko and the others. They discovered their co-worker's body, but still continued the search regardless, then turned on the sprinkler system and put out the fires. Watase gasped. He remembered something Kazami had said. Something way back at the start of the search, when they were at the makeshift base. Incidentally, we also have 2 radiation protection suits, but they got damaged while we were putting out fires, so we can't use them anymore. They were fine pieces of equipment with excellent fire and water resistance, airtight, even allowed you to connect an air tank directly to their face pieces. Kazami told him that as she'd been pointing to the ruined protection suits, their faceplates had been cracked. He remembered another thing he'd seen a while back, a body whose lower half had been burned wearing a... Watase's eyes widened. Those 2 memories had the answer he needed. I got it. Huh? I figured out a way to get through the hot water. What is it? The protection suits, they finally proved useful at the very end. Kazami said that the protection suits were airtight and had water resistance, so if you wore one of them, hot water wouldn't leak in. That would turn the 53 degrees Celsius water into 53 degrees Celsius air, a temperature he could withstand. But our protection suits have already been damaged. Don't worry, I already have a backup plan for that. What backup plan? I need to go and gather the things we'll need to escape right now. Could you stay with these kids and wait here? Hesitation filled Kazami's eyes. It was indeed dangerous to go off on one's own in the facility that Ukita and Jun were prowling. However, I know you're worried, but one person moving around will stick out less than 2. Please don't try it. Watase said that and stepped on the ladder. I'll be right back as soon as I get all the gear. Alright, be careful. Watase nodded and descended the ladder as fast as he could. He then headed for the makeshift base in Area 2. He picked up the air tank and one of the wrecked protection suits. This won't be enough to get us out of here. Watase took the cracked faceplate, threw it aside and ran out of the base. He went through Area N, picked up the axe there. Then he headed straight for Area 4 this time. All the protection suits I've seen so far have been damaged in some way. Tachibana and Mortabe's had broken faceplates, Dojima's was all battered up and the lower half of Hiyama's completely burned up. But if I combine them together... Watase ran to the elevator hall with that thought in mind. He found himself faced with Hiyama's body. Sorry about this, Hiyama. Watase apologized to Hiyama and then ripped his faceplate off. Now I have everything I need. He had an axe, air tank, perfectly intact faceplate, and an undamaged protection suit. Watase carried them all and went running off again. He headed towards the engine room, where Kazami and the other kids were waiting for him. Sorry I took so long. Kazami ran over to him as soon as he returned to the engine room. Captain, where'd you get that protection suit? I took the undamaged parts of multiple suits and combined them to get this. I never thought of that. Kazami said that with admiration in her voice. Watase nodded, then continued. Now we can finally get out of here. Yes. Kazami nodded and then pointed to the pipe near the ceiling. According to the blueprint, the pipe further in is apparently the drainage pipe. If you break the intake pipe by mistake, then all of lava will be flooded. Please be careful. Got it, I won't make a mistake like that after coming so far. I'll go break the filtering mechanism first. Just hold on a moment. Watase gripped an axe and walked over to the filtering mechanism, then swung down on the control board with all his might. After hitting it several times, the quiet sound of running water finally stopped. I did it. Now we can enter the pipe. Watase nodded and turned to Kazami. Okay then, time for the last choice. There's only one protection suit. Who do you think should go? Me or you? Mind you, whoever stays here will be exposed to that WX particle stuff anyway. Kazami hesitated for a moment before answering. I think I should go. Why? Because going into the pipe is more dangerous than staying here. It's still a 500-meter walk through heated water, and we have no guarantee that the air tank will hold up the whole way. I can't let you face such danger. Kazami stared right at him. Watase gave a faint smile. I thought you'd say that. But you know, it can't be that way. Huh? Your legs hurt, remember? You think you can walk through 500 meters of such a cramped pipe with that leg? No, it's only a scratch. I made it this far carrying Miss Sanamiya, did I not? But you were lagging behind a little bit. That lowers your chances of survival. Whoever goes in the pipe will bear the weight of all the lives remaining in this facility. In that case, we should gamble on the slightly higher chances of success, right? So that's why I'll be the one to go in that pipe. Watase said that in a clear voice. This is an order. I will not allow any objections. Captain? I object. Whoa now, what are you talking about? This isn't like you. But at first I was a hopeless weakling who had to keep getting saved by you. All I wanted was for you to accept me. So now we're at the very end. Let me show off for once. Kazami looked at the floor silently. Alright. And then finally gave him a resigned nod. Watase felt a wave of confidence wash over him. Alright then, now let's get this ready to break a hole in the pipe. Help me get on the protection suit. Yes. Watase put on the protection suit. Kazami set the air tank in the faceplate. Watase then carried the faceplate and air tank under his right arm, while holding the axe with his left hand, then turned to Kazami. Okay, I'm all set. Oh man, there's a thing here, right at the end. Okay, I'm all set. I'll call for help as soon as I get out of here. I admit I'm scared about leaving you and the others behind, but please wait for me. Kazami nodded without uttering a word. Watase felt his heart ache at the sad look on her face. She was the woman who'd once been his girlfriend. His partner who he'd fallen in love with because they were similar, but had also broken up because they were too similar. That's why Watase was painfully aware of how she felt. How she was worried about him, and how she felt discouraged about being left in this place with no AD. But they didn't have any time to lament their parting. This isn't the time to be taking it slow. But in spite of that thought, Watase couldn't hold back his feelings for Kazami. Not his feelings as a rescue worker, but as a man. Kazami? Watase called her by her first name for the first time since she'd woken up. Her eyes widened at the same time. He kissed her lips. He could feel her gasp. He probably kissed those lips many times. They felt somewhat nostalgic to him, and he could also feel her heartbeat through them. Kazami let the strength flow out of her body as she was giving herself entirely to him. Watase embraced her tightly, and then gently let go of her. Kazami looked at him with moist eyes. Watase, you just called me Kazami. Does that mean you got your memories back? No. Watase answered her honestly. I can't remember anything, no matter how hard I try. Nothing about the time we were dating or why we broke up. But while I can't remember them, my feelings from back then still seem to linger in the depths of my heart. They're all my feelings for you. All of the love I felt for you from the bottom of my heart. A faint tinge of red covered Kazami's cheeks. Watase gently caressed those cheeks. Hey Kazami, maybe I no longer have the right to be saying this, but if we make it out of this whole thing alive, why don't we take another walk through that park? It was the one fragment of their past together that Watase had remembered a short while ago. It was probably a memory of a happy time in both their lives. Kazami then smiled and nodded. If we get out of here... Alright, then it's a promise. Watase said that with a smile, then put the faceplate on. Here I go. And with that shout, he began climbing the ladder. Once he reached the top of the drainage pipe, he readied the axe. He swung it down on the pipe with all his might. Sparks flew as he created a small hole in the pipe. The pipe was as solid as a rock, so it was only natural that one strike wasn't enough to open up a big enough hole for someone to fit through. Watase let out a roar and kept striking the pipe over and over again. He put all his strength into each swing, filling them with his will to escape from this place. The hole kept getting bigger and bigger. Steam gushed out of the pipe and some of the hot water poured out. It was only a little. He really had stopped the water from running. He then kept on swinging away until the axe's blade had finally smashed. But he'd already done enough. He opened up a hole big enough for him to climb into. Alright. Watase looked down the ladder. Kazami was looking up at them with a worried look on her face. Tachibana, I've opened up a hole in the pipe. I'm going now. Take care of those kids for me. Kazami soon answered him. Captain, please be sure to come back, okay? Please be sure to keep that promise we just made. Yeah. Watase nodded and then climbed into the hole. He was now in the only way out of the facility. The pipe was filled with hot water. Darkness dyed the place pitch black. Watase could feel the heat through his protection suit. If he could walk 500 meters through this thing, he'd end up at Lake Rokume. Here I go. Watase sealed himself and began his lonely trek through the darkness to save everyone. Ooh. Alright. Alright, well I'll bring you back once the post-credit scene shows up, which we know it will.
こんなことって。
Watase had walked about 50 meters from the hole he'd broken open in the pipe, but now he stood frozen in the middle of that flooded pipe. Shit. There was something blocking his path. It was too dark for him to make it out, but he could already tell what it was. It was the forced circulation pump that had been on in the blueprint. He never expected to completely block the inside of the pipe. Why? I can't have come all this way for nothing. Watase punched the pump. It was hard and didn't budge an inch. It was just like the bulkhead. It didn't seem like something that human strength alone could deal with. Damn it, break! Break! I can't make it to the lake if I can't get rid of this damn thing. Then I can save everyone. Watase kept on desperately punching it, but his blows had little strength under the water. It soon grew painful for him to breathe. Crap. There was still enough air in the air tank, but exerting his strength in 53 degrees Celsius water was doing a real number on his heart and lungs. Despair rapidly overwhelmed him. His head was boiling from all the heat entrapped in his protection suit. If he stayed here, it'd only be ticking down the time until his death. God damn it! Watase kicked the pump, then began going back the way he came. Watase took off the faceplate once he'd gotten out of boiling water. He then climbed onto the pipe and descended the ladder. Captain? Watase turned around to find Kazami running towards him. You're back already? I'm sorry. There was an obstruction in the pipe. I couldn't even make it to Lake Orokume. Could we use the engine cutter or something to destroy the obstruction? Pipe's full of water. I don't think you can use the engine cutter underwater. I doubt it can even be destroyed through human strength to begin with. We have to find another escape route. But there are no other ways. Let's try starting all over from the beginning. We'll think of a way to open the bulkhead by Area 2's emergency staircase. It couldn't even be called a plan. They had no other options. Kazami just silently nodded. Watase took off his protection suit and picked up Natsuhiko. Tachibana, let's go. Yes. Kazami followed suit by picking up Salyu and left the room. According to Watase's watch, it was currently 3:09 PM. Only 7 minutes left until their AD wore off. Watase and Kazami's steps were weighed down by the heavy chains of despair. It had been hours since they'd last been there. The bulkhead was still closed, absolutely nothing had changed. Think it's possible to destroy the walls around it? Kazami, still carrying Salyu on their back, pondered Watase's question. It would probably be difficult. We should operate under the assumption that the walls are made from the same material as the bulkhead. If they weren't, then the commander and the others would have already blasted their way through them long ago. I see then, maybe the ceiling is... But before Watase could finish his sentence, the surroundings suddenly grew dark. A blackout? It seems the facility's power was out. Watase and Kazami looked around in confusion as a mechanical voice suddenly rang out. Main and backup power supplies offline. Now switching to emergency power. The lights came back on in coordination with that voice. It was somewhat dark, but nothing that had hampered their visibility. What was that? Why'd the main power go out now of all times? Watase turned to Kazami to ask her this, then gasped. What? Watase was struck speechless by what he was seeing. Salyu's slender arms were wrapped around Kazami's neck like a snake strangling its prey. Kazami gasped painfully for air as Salyu glared at Watase from behind her. Release Natsuhiko or else I'll choke this woman to death. Stop it, Salyu. We're just trying to save you guys. Why can't you understand that? I thought I told you to stop telling such transparent lies. You think you could trick me after you shot Natsuhiko? Those words shot straight through Watase's heart. Wait, what did you say? You didn't know, woman? You're lying, right? The captain would never do anything like that, right? Watase had no recollection of shooting Natsuhiko. However, he had memories that he couldn't explain. Watase just stood there at a total loss for an answer. Salyu then whispered into Kazami's ear. If you don't know, then I'll tell you. This man is a terrorist. He attacked us last night and this morning as well. Everything that's happened here is all his fault. Even you should have questioned that idea several times. Stop it, I don't want to hear anymore. I trust the captain. And take a close look at what's in that man's pocket. She was of course talking about the gun that Watase had picked up in Area N. That gun probably belonged to this man to begin with. He used it to shoot Natsuhiko. But at that moment, I said stop. Kazami screamed and violently shook Salyu off her. Salyu's body was sent flying backwards. She then landed on the staircase. All Watase could do was watch the whole thing from beginning to end. Salyu proceeded to tumble down the staircase. She finally stopped at the landing of the stairs at B1. She wasn't budging an inch. Sally? Watase frantically ran over to Sally to check her condition. But luckily she didn't display any injuries such as bone fractures, and her pulse and breathing was stable as well. Watase breathed a sigh of relief, just as Kazami came walking down the staircase on shaky feet. Captain, is she... Her face was deadly pale. She looked really shaken up. It's okay, she just passed out. I see. Kazami's body was trembling. She then looked at Watase, with eyes full of fear. Tachibana? Kazami was acting weirdly. She then wrapped her arms around her body as if she were trying to hold herself back. Captain, She suddenly stopped talking as she'd begun. What's wrong? She didn't answer him. What she did was stare at him carefully. Anxiety welled up in Watase's heart. Tachibana, why are you looking at me like that? Wait, you don't believe what Sayu said, do you? It's ridiculous. There's no way in hell I could be a terrorist. I don't care if I have amnesia. I'm sure of that. You guys know better than anyone else that I've been a rescue worker for ages, don't you? Kazami didn't answer. Watase's anxiety only grew worse. Soon enough, she began talking in a quiet voice as if attempting to rid herself from her fear. Captain, may I ask you just one question? What is it? This mystery had been on my mind for a long time. Captain, why was it you went down to the basement at 6:42 AM, shortly after this incident occurred? I told you guys, it's because Dojima and Hiyama called for me on their radio. So what you're saying is that your radio could receive transmissions then, correct? But you know, I personally tried to reach you on your radio just a few minutes before that. Watase felt his insides freeze over. Now that you mention it, Kazami had said something to that effect way back. At 6:35 AM, radio communication with Watase had suddenly ceased. There was an inconsistency with those words, which meant, why was it that Dojima and Hiyama's transmission got through to your radio, yet mine did not? Did you make it so that my transmissions weren't received for some reason? So that you could sneak off during a life-saving mission and do something else? Hey, how long have you been thinking that? Ever since you said you got some of your memories back. You told us why you went down to the basement. But I didn't say anything because I trusted you. I figured that time discrepancy was just you remembering the timing correctly. Kazami lowered her eyes and continued in a shaky voice. I tried as hard as I could to trust you. I trusted you for as long as I can remember, no matter how much you changed, and regardless of your amnesia. That's why I truly was happy when you held me in your arms earlier. I felt like you'd gotten back to your old self. But regardless, the past is just that and nothing more. No matter how much I try to tell myself otherwise, I just... Tachibana? Just as she said that, Kazami's face and tone of voice changed. I just can't do it, Watase. If what Miss Sanamiya said was true, then everything fits. When I think of this facility's true nature and the past you, I realize there's only one answer. What are you saying? If you are a murderer, then the least I can do is preserve your good name. Kazami reached for a fire extinguisher stationed next to the emergency staircase. What are you going to do with that thing? Kazami didn't answer. Instead, she started talking again with a voice full of lament. You went down the wrong path, Watase. Now it's time for you to receive your punishment for that choice. And a second later, Kazami swung the fire extinguisher sideways. Watase immediately blocked it with his arm. His bones creaked beneath the force of Kazami's merciless assault. Stop it, why are you doing this? Watase, I'm so sorry, Watase. This is the only thing I can do for you now. Though she was apologizing, Kazami's eyes were filled with intent to kill. Why is this happening to Tachibana too? Watase shuddered, then promptly thrust Kazami away. She fell on the staircase with a fire extinguisher still in hand. Watase took the chance to rush down to B1 and dash out of the stairwell. He continued to carry Natsuhiko as he ran. He was worried about Salu too, especially since she was lying unconscious in the stairwell. But it was all he could do to try and take Natsuhiko to a safe place. Damn it, what the hell's going on? He and Kazami had been seeing each other heart to heart just a short while ago. They've been trusting each other, so why was it all just wishful thinking on my part? But the pain in his arm from Kazami's attack was all too real. It ached painfully with every vibration that came through him from the effort of running, as if to remind him of the harsh reality. He found himself blindly fleeing into one of the connecting passageways, but he had heard footsteps coming down from just up ahead. Who's there? And no sooner had he thought that, did he see Jin heading in his direction. Oh, that's worse. Captain! She was still holding the engine cutter in her hands. Watase turned around and ran for it. He kept carrying Natsuhiko and escaped into some other area. He was panting. His whole body hurt like mad. But just as he felt he could run no more, a dry sound reached his ears. Watase fell to the ground. His abdomen was hot. That heat soon warped into agony. He'd been shot in his flank. Oh, it's got to be Ukita. Watase looked around as he pressed his hand against his abdomen. He couldn't see anyone, but he could hear a voice coming from somewhere. Got you this time, Captain Kasasagi. Old man? Oh, that looks like it really hurts. Then I'll bring you the rest right away as an act of mercy. Watase stood up before Ukita finished talking. He reaffirmed his grip on Natsuhiko and started running again, all while blood was pouring from his flank. Fortunately, the bullet had apparently missed any organs. But the pain of the gunshot wound was great, and the bleeding just wouldn't stop. Shit. Watase ran as he looked for a safe place. Before long he saw it. The connecting passageway to Area N. The only way to get past the gate that lay to the end was with the level N card that Watase had. Watase screamed and spurred himself onwards, and made a break for Area N. He opened the gate and tumbled his way into the other side. A strange sensation ran through him as his fingertips convulsed, most likely due to the effects of the WX particles. But Watase endured them. I'm the only one with a level N card, which means I can shake them off if I close the gate. But at that moment, he looked back at the open gate and spotted Kazami in the passageway, fire extinguishers still in hand. The glare pierced Watase, and then she made a mad dash straight for Watase. Come on, close, hurry up! The gate started to slowly shut, but it wouldn't be fast enough. Kazami ran through the open gate and swung a fire extinguisher down at Watase's head. Gah! Sparks filled Watase's vision. His body shook left and right as he lost all sense of balance. She's gonna kill me if I don't do something. And if I die now, then Natsuhiko will also be in danger. Those thoughts held Watase's splintering consciousness in place. Then he mustered the last of his strength and pushed Kazami right out of Area N. Kazami grunted at almost the exact same moment that the gate finished shutting. Watase could hear a voice on the other side. Watase! Open the gate, Watase! The voice grew distant. Watase's headache and convulsions were growing more and more intense. Did the AD wear off? All strength left him the moment he thought that. He suddenly felt faint. Watase tried to fight off that feeling, but failed. The floor was growing closer and closer. Crap, I'm falling. Watase felt Natsuhiko's weight vanish from his back at the same time he fell. It seemed the force had flung him to the side, but there was no longer anything Watase could do about that. A thought made its way into Watase's faint consciousness. How did it come to this? Did I do something wrong? Thinking about it wouldn't yield an answer. He didn't know a thing. Way too many bizarre incidents had occurred in the past 6 hours. The sights and mysteries he'd witnessed up until that point flickered before his mind's eye. The loss of his memories. The 9 of them being trapped in the facility. The murder victims they'd found. The survivor who'd run away from him time after time. The wrecked cargo lift and the body of the unidentified girl. The disappearance of the AD stock. The loss of any rhyme or reason to everything his companions said and did. The lack of any fires or nuclear reactor in Area N, and finding Natsuhiko on the brink of death instead. And the discovery of and subsequent disappearance of Yuri's body. Was all of that actually real? He wasn't even sure of that anymore. But if it was real, then what the hell happened here? Where did Yuri's body go? Kazami, Jun, Ena, Ukita, and Yuri? The faces of all those people who Watase had met up until that point materialized in his brain. No, that's not all. What happened to the 9th survivor? Where's Mashido Toba? He didn't want to doubt anyone, but everyone was suspicious. I can't help but think that someone set things up so they'd end up this way. And who was the mastermind? It was me! I'm playing the game. All he knew for sure was it wasn't him. And then, it can't be Natsuhiko. He was dying in here. So I want to make sure that at least he can get out of here. But Watase's consciousness was growing fainter by the second. Just before he lost consciousness, it happened. He heard the beating of a heart. For a moment he thought it was his own heartbeat. But that wasn't the case. That sound appeared to be coming from somewhere closer. He could sense that something was moving next to him. It can't be. Watase forced his eyes open and looked that way. He was standing there. Why? The boy who was supposed to be on the brink of death was standing there, standing tall and glaring down at Watase with wide eyes. Why had he woken up so suddenly? Why was he glaring at Watase? Watase lay there without a single answer to any of those questions. The boy then spoke to him. Get up. None of this is over yet. But at the same time, he registered Natsuhiko's voice. Watashi's consciousness faded into darkness. At the same time, Labo entrance hall, surface. So you're back now, Dr. Tenkawa? Yeah, what's the situation? The conversation was underway. Uneasy men wearing protection suits were all lined up in the hall. We cut the power and confirmed that the amplifier went offline. The readings are already decreasing. I see, so only 3 more hours to go, huh? The man asked the woman wearing a white lab coat a question. Do you think those two are still alive? We can only hope so. Roger that, then we'll remain on standby. The men in protection suits then dispersed through the facility. A great number of men with the same equipment were squirming around the entrance hall. A man who was being held back at the entrance to the facility started shouting. Don't give me that bullcrap, what do you mean we're not even allowed on the surface floors? The surface floors have already been evacuated. Please wait until the bulkheads open up. As the woman listened to that noisy argument from a distance, she turned her eyes deeper toward the facility. Specifically, she was looking at a shut bulkhead. How long do they plan to keep repeating this? There wasn't a soul in there that could tell what emotions lay hidden in her eyes. She just said nothing and continued to stare at the bulkhead. And far beyond that shut bulkhead, in the depths of the facility, lay the body of those who'd suffered the most unnatural deaths. One who had collapsed before accomplishing their goal. Those who had become victims of malice. Corpses yet undiscovered. And life that was currently on the verge of flickering out. In a long-forgotten place in a corner of the vast facility. Mashiro lay a girl who was bleeding out. Her life was faint and her consciousness was on the brink of fading. A faint voice passed through her barely moving lips. Natsuhiko. However, her words fell on no ears, but dissolved into the darkness instead. After end. Alright, we got the good end. We did it. Now we can move on to before. Looking forward to it. I'll be kicking off from where I carried on, but I'm excited, man, because there's so many questions left unanswered. So many questions.
穏やかな日々を謳歌する少年たち。しかし、その平穏は一つの小さな事故から崩れ出した。遠巻きに少年を見つめる謎の少女。隣人から伝えられる不穏な警告。覚醒していく少年の能力と蘇る忌まわしい過去の記憶。その中で彼らは本当の恐怖を知ることになる。大切な人を守るため、自らの過去を清算するため、少年たちは原子力研究所ラボに向かう。たとえそこに残酷な真実が待ち受けていようとも。ルートダブル、ビフォークライム、アフターデイズ。ルート、ビフォー。必ず君を救い出してみせる。そのためなら何度だって君の時間を過去へ巻き戻す。